Hello, I'm Mike Fotenopulos. I'm Springdale Public Schools academic coach, and today I want to talk to you about the ACT test. Specifically, I'd like to talk to you about taking the reading section and the science section. Both of these sections have something in common, and that is that both of these really test your ability or your reading comprehension ability. Sure, there's going to be moments in the reading section that if you knew something about what you're reading, it might help you. And sure, there are moments in the science section that if you knew about the particular scientific experiment that you're reading about, you might have an upper hand. But for the most part, when you do the reading section and the science section of both of these parts of the test, it's reading comprehension that the ACT people are going after. So again, I always start off every time I do one of these with what does the ACT test stand for? And a lot of times students might come up with some really convoluted and far-reaching ideas, when in fact the ACT stands for American College Test. And I want you to think about that, because it's that simplicity, it's that specificness, and it's that predictability that I want you to operate when you're doing the ACT test. It's doable, and I want you to think of that, like that. The next thing that I want you to think about is, what score do you want? And a lot of kids just think that maybe this is an IQ test and I just go in there and let my natural raw abilities play out, when in fact you can actually study for this test, which is probably why you're watching this video. You can actually prepare for this test. And I want you to think of that too, while you're thinking of the test number that you want. So let's go back, and whenever you get a book in front of you, and by the way, while we're there, let's talk about that for a quick second. I think this is probably one of your better bets. The official ACT prep guide. You can get one of these at Amazon.com. You can check out your school library. They might have some of these. You can go to your public library and just check one out, but then you can't write in them because you're going to have to give those back. So Amazon.com might be a great place to get one of these. And again, you'll pay for this. It'll be sent to you, and I bet the shipping and the cost of the book are about the same. So that's where I would go first, is the official ACT prep guide there. If you can't get your hands on one of those, I know your counselors at your high schools can get their hands on one of these. This is preparing for the ACT test. And again, this is sent out by the ACT people. The reason I like the other one is because you get 3 tests in it, and this one only gives you 1 test. So you go back to the back where it says the raw scores. And here you can start to see what it is that you want to make. So for instance, if I want to make a 21 and I come across here, I can start to kind of figure out, well, this is what I've got to get. I've got to get 22 to 23 out of 40 correct, and I'm probably going to be around a 21 on that part of the test. In order to make a 21 on the science test, again, go back across, and there I am. I'm making a 21 out of 40 correct. And then you can start just making your way up, pretending maybe you've already done a 26 on the ACT and you want to get a 28 because that's even more scholarship dollars, or a 32 because that's the most prized, I think. That's the Arkansas Governor Scholarship along with the 3.5 GPA. And you can see where you're at there. You need to be making 35 to 36 out of the reading. That is to say, you can miss about 3 or 4 or 5 questions out of those 40. So there you go. Again, I would make friends with this raw table before I start to go take the ACT test, just so that I can start to understand what it is I got to do in each one, the English, the math, the reading, or the science, to get the score that I want. So again, let's go ahead and get started, and let's take a look at what you need to do well on the ACT test when you're taking when you're going to take the reading and the science portions. So let's flip over here to the reading section first. And I've got some notes that I've already written in here, and then I want you to feel free that when you take the test, you can write all over this booklet. You can write all over anything when you're taking the test and when you're studying. So keep that in mind. So, predictability. We talked about that earlier. We talked about how the ACT kind of has a simple acronym, and again, I want you to think in those simple terms. So the first thing that I come across is I see the directions here, and if it were me and I were you, I'm reading those directions. And I'm not going to be reading the directions on the day of the test. Again, the directions are the same as they're going to be on every test. So there's no need to spend time reading directions. Again, predictability. Again, we know the predictability of the actual minutes versus questions. There's 35 minutes, there's 40 questions, and each passage, there's going to be 4 passages, and each passage has 10 questions. So that's going to give you a breakdown, and I've said it here, about 8 minutes and 45 seconds per passage. So again, as you're looking at that and preparing, you need to start preparing like that. Now, another thing that you're going to see that's very predictable about the ACT test and the reading portion is that it's going to have 4 passages, and each passage is the same, is in the same format. The first one is always going to be a prose fiction. The second one will always be a social science one. The third one will always be a humanities, and the fourth one will always be a natural science one. So keep that in mind. The next thing that I'm going to start thinking about is which one of these am I going to attack first? I wouldn't get into the idea of immediately just going to number 1. Quite simply, it could be wordy, it could be arduous, and it could be kind of a mental jumping jack that they've got here, designed to kind of get you off your game. So I would probably go towards one that seemingly has a lot of white space on the page. And that would be the first one that I would spend most of my time on, in the sense of if I really was going to try and pay attention to the 8 minutes and 45 seconds per passage. Remember, how many of these have I got to get correct to get a 21? Well, you got to get somewhere in the neighborhood of about 6 to 7 correct per. So I'm looking at this one, passage 3, and it's got a lot of white space. So I'm thinking I might attack this first. And then I look at passage 3, and I can immediately tell with these boxed in areas that I'm dealing with some form of comparison. I'm dealing with a passage A and a passage B, and then I'm going to have to answer questions about that. So I don't know how you feel about writing a comparative essay, but here you're fixing to read a comparative essay and then answer questions about a comparison essay. So this might be one that I'll leave on the back burner for whatever reason. And then here's the fourth one, passage 4, and it seems to have a little bit more print than the one that was clean earlier or full of white space. So again, I'd probably leave this one last. I'd do this one first. I'd probably do that one second, and then this one I would do third. And I would probably start to elect more time to this one than I would the others. In other words, I might give this one 9 minutes or 10 minutes. And this is where your practice comes in. So what are you going to do? Are you going to spend more time reading the passage than you are reading the questions and answering them? Are you going to spend more time reading the questions and answering and less time here? It really all depends on you. And this is where your practice comes in. You need to practice to figure out exactly what style and what method you want to use. And again, that's why I suggest getting one of these books that's got 3 tests in them so you can practice a great deal. Let's go back now. So, Mr. Fotenopulos, what do you do when you are when you're actually taking the test? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm really going to make friends with this first paragraph. I'll read the little byline to get an idea of what we're talking about, but I'm going to read that first paragraph. And I'm going to read that last paragraph, because this one's going to obviously tell me what we're going to talk about. And then I might even put notes out here on the side of what it is that we're about to talk about. And then the last paragraph tells me what we've talked about. This is good writing. This is what you would see in any kind of good essay. What you're going to talk about, what you've talked about. Also, I want to keep in my mind the idea of relationships. What are the relationships that are going on in this story? And then I'm going to start to make notes of those relationships as I'm reading. Notice, I'm going to start to read first and last sentences of the paragraphs. First and last sentences of the paragraph. This should take me about, and I'm going to take notes out to the side. I think this should take somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 4 minutes. This should now leave me about 4 to 6 minutes to start answering these questions, these 10 questions. And on a couple of these passages, I want to be as perfect as I can be. So I might even skip the first question and the last question. Because again, predictability. Most of the time, these questions, first and last, are kind of big, encompassing questions. Rather, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to really start making friends with these. Anytime I see some form of line that I can immediately go to, I'm going to start answering that question. And you're going to see that throughout these. Now, this one is full of white space, but then it doesn't give you a whole lot of these where you can go right to the line. Again, if I'm taking notes and I'm reading that first paragraph, last paragraph, and I'm obsessing on the relationships, so to speak, within this essay, which is what it is, I think I'm going to probably be really successful here. And again, if you want to throw an anchor out and spend 9 or 10 minutes on this one, you've got to understand that you'll be spending less time with something like this. And look at it. Look how arduous it looks. But right off the bat, look what they've done. They've given you a line 46 to go right to, line 52 and 63 to go to, a line 74 through 76, and here's another one. And so yes, they've given you one that's fairly arduous, but right off the bat, they've given you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions that you can immediately just go to. So again, this one I wouldn't worry about trying to be perfect on. This one I'd try to get perfect. And then that second one that I said about, that I was talking about, the natural science one, again, do the same thing. I'm going to read this paragraph, I'm going to read that paragraph, I'm going to take notes. Again, what are the relationships in here? And then I'm going to start reading first and last sentences. And again, this should take about 3 to 4 minutes. And then I'm going to spend more time on these questions. And now you're looking at doing a really good job score-wise on the reading section. And then lastly, the prose. I might save this one always as my third or fourth option because the prose tends to be a little taxing in the sense that this is what I call the little Johnny story. Little Johnny and his dog, and the next thing you know, you're reading about it, and the next thing you know, you really get caught up and you start reading everything. It's a fictional story. And again, kids get caught up reading the actual story and they start to kind of waste valuable time. Again, first paragraph, last paragraph, first sentence, last sentence, and again, obsess about relationships. What do you think this author is trying to talk about in these relationships with this story? And again, I might skip that first question and that last question, and I'd answer these body questions first. And then also remember our other tips. Have an idea of what you're going to circle when it comes to that speedy moment. You got 1 minute left before the time is called. Which one are you going to start to fill in the bubble on? Are you going to go random, or are you going to have a set letter that you're going to circle? And for me, I would just constantly obsess on B. It's been proven over time that B is the best answer in the ACT test. It hits about 18% of the time. People used to think it was C, but enough evidence has been shown that it's B. So again, have that letter in mind before you take the test. And next, I want to go to the science test. It's a lot like the reading test. Again, it's reading comprehension. It's in here. You don't necessarily need to know a lot of stuff about this subject at all. As a matter of fact, there will be no outside information in these questions about that. It can all be found out here in the reading. And the same is true about science. For instance, let's get in here and take a look at what they've done here. Well, by the way, let's have a game plan. There's a passage 1, there's a passage 2, and it goes all the way to passage 6. There's going to be 6 passages, and there's the 6th one there. Most of these passages will have 7 or 6 questions. That leaves you with about 5 minutes and 45 seconds per passage for each for each passage. And again, you got 35 minutes, 40 questions. It's always the same, and there's always going to be the same question or the same directions. Again, I don't spend time on the day of the exam reading those directions and wondering what they are. The next thing I'm going to do is quickly peruse which one of these is, again, kind of the most reader-friendly. And I look at this one, and it's not. It's got a tremendous amount of print, and I can tell immediately that it's got 1 study, 2 studies, and 3 studies. So I got 3 different studies going on, and you can guarantee that they're going to ask you a hypothesis question. That is to say, what about a 4th study? Or none of this is here, but what would happen if you put study 1, 2, and 3 together? So again, it's like reading a comparative essay, except this one's got 3 comparisons. So I might save this one for last. Immediately, I look at that, and it's a lot friendlier to even view. I can see that, yes, they have 3 hypotheses, but immediately, it's just a lot of less stuff to wonder about. And again, I can read that in about 5 minutes and 45 seconds. I can read this in about a minute or a minute and a half. And then I can get over here and start chopping on these questions. And I might even give this a little bit more time than 5 minutes and 45 seconds. Maybe I'll give this 6 or 7 minutes. Here's another one that I'm probably going to do. Passage 3. Again, all I've got to work with are these 2 graphs. That's pretty simple. Or it's simple in the sense of being able to look at it and not be intimidated. There's another one. So here's 3 in a row, passage 2, 3, and 4, that seemingly are not as intimidating as that first one was. Here I see experiment 1, 2, and 3. So again, I've got kind of a 3-legged comparison essay that I got to deal with. And then finally I get to the last one. And it looks like I could probably do that one. Again, a good little amount of reading and a graph and a graph. So again, as I've gone through these, have you kind of clued into what the science test is really all about? The science test is really all about your ability to read graphs and extract information out of those graphs. That's why you've been taking these science classes for all these years. Again, you won't be intimidated by these acronyms of kg. You know that means kilograms. You won't be intimidated by these words like watts, and you won't be intimidated by line graphs and things of that nature because of your studies and because of the content that you've been studying. Rather, don't let that mumbo jumbo throw you. And that's really what the ACT people are trying to say. Don't let scientific language throw you here. What can you pull out of these lessons for a correct answer? So just because your teacher hasn't covered, for instance, here this one's about researchers studied how diet and the ability to smell food can affect lifespan of normal fruit flies. And so there you are, you might sit there and start pulling your hair out. My teacher's never talked about fruit flies. That's not what this is about. It's not about fruit flies. This is about your ability to extract that data out of these graphs and make sense of it, and then answer questions. And you're always going to have a hypothesis moment in one of these, in all of these rather. There's always going to be a hypothesis question where you've got to think about what will happen in the future. What could happen? And so again, I'm thinking out loud, what is it that I got to make on this science test to get the score that I want? And again, if you're a 21, 22 ACT kid, again, you need to be getting about a little bit over half of those questions correct. So again, this is where I would be putting myself on the clock. And at home, I would pick out passage 4. And I would give myself 6 minutes to read this, answer those questions, and then turn around and see how I did. I would also stop. I'd pick another test altogether and just go back and circle the answers right now before you even take the test. Just circle the answers. Go back, find them, come in here, and now come at it from a backwards perspective. Why is that the correct answer? Where is that I can see that is the correct answer in here? And that's when I believe this will really start making sense. And I believe the last test of the ACT test which is sometimes getting you when you're the most tired, might become one of your more, I wouldn't say easier, but you might be more successful here. So again, that kind of wraps up our ACT test prep moment for the day, talking about the ACT reading and the ACT science test. The reading and the science portion are similar in that they will test your reading comprehension skills. How well can you read something and then tell somebody what you've read? And that's really what we're dealing with here. Both of them do that. Both of them are asking you to extract information from a given set of paragraphs or experiments, and then what are the correct answers when compared to other answers. So again, that's going to take practice. That's going to take practice on your part in reading quickly and trying to discern what is needed information and what isn't. And that just comes from experience. And I think you can do it. And again, I highly recommend going to your counselor and picking up one of these ACT preparing for the ACT test, or if you can, get yourself to a public library or a school library and see if you can find the official ACT prep guide, because these are also on Google, and you go to YouTube and you'll see people working these problems that are in these books, and you'll see them working them out right in front of you, especially if you can get the year that they have and kind of make that combined effort watching those videos online. So good luck to you. I know you can do it. If you ever have any questions, again, reach out to me. I'm Mike Fotenopulos. I'm here with Springdale Public Schools, and I'm your academic coach, and I want to try to help fan your flames of academic excellence. Have a good day.